Well, good afternoon and welcome to the Friday live stream. We are doing it 1 hour later, as you can see, and hopefully that's more convenient for you going forward, which just means that we're going to be super hungry for lunch an hour from now. Anyway, welcome to the Friday live stream. And today we're going to be talking about the first 3 steps of the S.E.T sales process, and we're going to be role playing that for you. It's been a big request, especially as I've been training around the East Coast recently, that we record the steps in a role play of the S.E.T sales process. But we've got some other topics to discuss, some questions that have come up over the last week, and some things that I think you will benefit from. So let's do this. Not accustomed to. There we go. Okay. First things first. Here's today's agenda. So the first thing I want to share with you is next week's itinerary. For folks who are in the Northeast, I'm going to be up there next week, and I want to show you where I'm going to be, just in case you want me to swing by and have some one-on-one discussion time. One of the other things that came up over the last week was Grease Gobbler versus Code Orange. What's the difference between them? When should I use what? So I figured today would be a great day to handle that. Then we're going to get into the main meat of today, the S.E.T sales process, the first 3 steps of the S.E.T sales process, and role playing that for you. Then we're going to jump into the EnviroGuard factory. I'm sorry. Mold severity index support updates, new documents that you're going to be seeing coming out over the next week or two to improve your sales. And then finally, EnviroGuard factory certification. Finally, some dates that you can make indelible in your calendar. So let's see here. All right. For next week, maybe I can make this. Christy, could you help me out here and go to the next larger screen so everybody can see that? Take it to the one to the right. Okay. All right. Here we go. All right. So starting on Monday, we are going to be down in that DC, Baltimore area. Now, we do have a fairly tight calendar, but if someone were to reach out and say, hey, is there any way you could fit me in for a few minutes here? Just let me know. But that day, we're going to be between that DC and Baltimore area. All right, Tuesday, we're going to be in the South Jersey, Philly area, and we do have a little bit of space available there. So if you're in that, southeastern Pennsylvania or South Jersey area, or if you're further up in New Jersey and want to catch like a mid to late afternoon appointment, we could probably make some things happen there. Wednesday, I want to say, let's see, I'm seeing Carl in the late afternoon around 3 o'clock. I'm seeing Robin and Chris at noon that day. So we probably have some morning appointment availability then. And who knows, maybe an afternoon appointment if we could fit that in. And then on Thursday, we're going to be starting the day actually up in Hartford, Connecticut, which means we're going to be getting some good pizza up there in New Haven on our way from North Jersey to Hartford on Wednesday evening. But on Thursday, we start out in Hartford and we make our way down to Monroe, New York, which you can't see here, but it's in that southeastern corner of New York. And then finally, on Friday, we end up in central Pennsylvania. And we're going to be at the plant that morning. But if you are in central Pennsylvania or anywhere down that I-81 corridor, we are heading home to North Carolina on Friday mid-morning, and then, of course, into the afternoon. So reach out to me and let me know if that is, if there's something that you want to do. Email me, call us, mmeyer@enviroguarddirect.com. Maybe Christy can throw that up on the screen for everybody. And then, feel free to give us a call here. If you want to book an appointment, that's 828-548-3900. Okay, next topic, Grease Gobbler versus Code Orange. What's the difference? Well, the first thing is that Grease Gobbler is alkaline in nature. And I'll compare and contrast some stuff here for you. But the first thing that Grease Gobbler is great for is removing organic contaminants. That might be the tannins that you see in gutters and downspouts, oxidation that you see in like siding, things like that, and then soil loads associated with contaminants from like category 2 and 3 water damage. Of course, grease gobbler is phenomenal on grease, as you would expect, engine block, grease removal, things like that. And it's a great emulsifier to use as part of a cocktail for React Extract for water damage, React Extract for sewage, React Extract for biohazard, and React Extract for exteriors, okay? And again, we're working on these cocktail cards, so expect to see all these types of things from us in the near future. And those are things that you'll be able to add to the sales process that we're going to be talking about today. All right, let's talk about the other side, Code Orange. It is neutral as compared to a high pH. Now, Code Orange has a neutral pH, which means it's great for finished surfaces. So think about your painted surfaces and things like that, but it's great for oils, as we've been talking about. That might be petroleum-based oils, so think about oil spills specifically, cooking oils, or cutting oils in manufacturing. The other thing that it's great for is hydrocarbon removal, which is soot, right? Soot is a hydrocarbon, which is a partially burnt oil. And then the final thing is that it's an emulsifier for this cocktail for sure, and that is React Extract for fire damage, okay? So that kind of parses it out for you. It kind of gives you an idea, the lay of the land, why you would want to use one or the other, and why both of them are probably important in your arsenal when it comes to your remediation and restoration services. If you have any questions about that, as always, feel free to bring them up in the stream, right? If you're viewing today and you have a question about that, feel free to ask. But also, if you ever have questions, use the email address support@enviroguarddirect.com so that we know that it's a support question coming in, and we will get right back to you. Or always call us at 828-548-3900. That's our main line here. Ask for me, and I will be happy to answer any questions, even if, and a lot of questions that come up are kind of like, what's right, but you just want to bounce it off of somebody else and make sure that you're right on target, or that there's not a little alteration to protocol or something like that. That's what we're here for. Okay, next topic is the set sales process, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to change our perspective here. Let me bring in the second camera, and then I'm going to stop this camera, and I am going to move over, and we have a guest today. And let me make sure I move this out of the way just a little bit. So we are going to be talking about, and I think I need to remove this camera also, right? Yeah. Okay. This is Christy, my wife. Most of y'all know Christy pretty well. She's been involved with EnviroGuard since what, 2005?
Forever.
Yeah, forever. So anyway, so what we're going to be doing is a role play for you today. Is this a good, let me see if I can, okay, yeah, they can see the background. I think that works, right?
Both screens?
No, because what we want everyone to focus on our interaction, right? We don't want to focus on a separate screen or anything like that. I want to take you through these first 3 steps. And this is going to be recorded, right? You can go back to YouTube or our new website, which is the video library, and view this afterwards. But focus on the interaction, the questions that are being asked, how they're being asked. I'm going to try to stop along the way as we go and explain each step as well. And again, if you do have questions, bring those up in the chat, and we will be happy to answer them. I'm going to reach across real quick. I'm going to grab some water, just in case. All right. So here we go. So the first step, let me just make sure my pointer is where it needs to be. Okay. So, before we get there, I forgot about this. Let's kind of zoom out on the entire process, right? So one of the things that we teach overall when we are training is what's called the perfect customer life cycle. The perfect customer life cycle is everything that it takes to go from generating interest with a customer all the way through creating advocates. Okay. And there's 8 steps to that. But the step that we're focused on today, it's what's known as the conversion step. So let's zoom in on that for a second. There we go. And this is where the set sales process takes place within the overall big picture. Okay. So just keep that in mind. There are 8 things that you want to make sure that you're doing in your interaction with customers all the time. And step number 4 of that is convert. Okay. And within that, the way that we're going to convert, a lot of people, you as a contractor are going to convert, is that you might have, as you can see, like a one-on-one selling method. And so that's what we're working on today, right? Is what does that interaction look like in the first 3 of the total 6 steps? Now, let me bring up a caveat here. This is not the sales process that you want to use when it comes to emergency services, right? Somebody just had a water damage, you're responding to that. It's an insurance-based claim, that sort of thing. That's not what we're talking about today. We're talking primarily about cash-based sales, right? Somebody calls you in and says, I've got water in my crawl space, mold in my attic, foundation issues in my basement, things like that, right? Those types of scenarios are really what we're focused on today. So don't think that this is a sales process. There might be things from it that are helpful for emergency services, but don't you take this as insurance claim-based sales tactics, okay? This is your sales process when it comes to non-emergency services. Hopefully that's clear. Okay, so let's start with the first step, and that is the interview. Now, if there is one thing that I think most companies who are following a sales process now like this will say is that they get to the inspection way too early and they sound like all their competition, right? Because it's kind of natural. We as problem solvers, you as a problem solver, want to go to your customer's house and within minimal time, tell them what's going on and what the solution should be. However, all of your competition sounds exactly like that, right? Because you go in there with, from experience, a lot of educated assumptions going on, and you don't slow down to build that relationship and that rapport, and more importantly, the problems from the customer's perspective, okay? So the important thing about step 1 of the sales process is the interview. Building a relationship with that customer and understanding the problem from their point of view, not your own. Now, the purpose of establishing a sales process is if you're building a company that you want to scale that's not reliant upon you 100% of the time, you've got to have a process, and this is going to give you that sales process to make that happen. So we're going to go right into this, and I'm going to spend the next few minutes going through these questions with Christy here as our homeowner. Now, one thing that you need to know about this is that the problem that we're going to run in here, okay, so I'm just going to give you a little scenario, okay? The problem is that Christy, as a homeowner, has a basement problem and a crawl space problem. So in other words, the foundation of her home is built on a finished basement and of course, an unfinished crawl space, right? So it's a combination job. We run into that a lot when we're consulting with customers here. And so we're going to go through these questions, and then she's going to end in some things that, we came up with yesterday as, what all of her problems are. All right. So kind of sit back, watch this interaction occur. So the first thing that I'm going to do, outside of some pleasantries and things like that, is I want to, find a comfortable place where we can just both sit down for a few minutes before I do anything else. Okay. So, Christy, thanks for having me into your home today. Before I get started in anything like, I kind of want to get to know the problems from your perspective. I can make some assumptions about what's going on, but I need to know from you kind of how you view it, what you've been going through. I need to know more about your house. So it's all about your perspective right now. So would you mind if I ask you a few questions before I get started with my inspection? Okay. My first question is, when was the home built?
Our home was built in 2005.
Okay, you said our home?
What my kids?
Okay, all right. By the way, one of the things that we want to do here is establish whether you have a one-leg or a two-legged customer, right? The important thing is that if you're going to have a couple who's involved in decision-making, they need to be together in that meeting with you. You don't want to get in a situation where they're using that meeting to kick some tires and the person who you're with doesn't have the decision-making authority. So keep that in mind. So let's return to this. Okay. So you said that the home was built in 2005.
Yes.
Okay. How long have you lived here?
Moved in 2017, so 5.5 years.
Okay. So are you familiar with the construction materials involved, how the home is built?
Well, obviously timber frame, so there's a lot of wood.
Yep.
And then my basement is finished.
Okay. Make sure, would you speak up just to make sure the microphone, I project, but we want to make sure the microphone catches it. Okay. So but you're not familiar with outside of the timber framing exactly how everything is constructed in terms of insulation, mechanicals, foundation, things like that?
Not really.
Would it be helpful if, as I'm doing the inspection, I kind of make notes on that and kind of inform you about how things are built? Okay.
Yes.
All right. The reason we do that, by the way, is that it can really be helpful to a homeowner when we're going into issues that they have, maybe draftiness, maybe cold floors, a lot of the different things that you run into during this interview process, to notate how things are happening in the inspection so that you can become a better educator of your customer once the inspection is complete. Okay, that's step 4. We're not going to get into education today, but I want you to know why we're asking some of these questions. Okay. Have you noticed cold floors or drafts in the home?
Yes. The floors are very cold along the outside, like where I go to bed. I can feel the cold.
Okay.
Along the wall there.
Okay. So what we'll do is during the inspection, we're just going to look at maybe reasons that you're getting cold floors around the perimeter of your home, is what it sounds like, right? Okay. Have you seen any mold upstairs yet?
I haven't.
As in on the first floor?
On the lower level, or the
No,
main
your
level?
main level.
I haven't really seen much.
Okay. So we ask the question there and we end with the term yet. That's a really important term because it insinuates that even if you're not seeing it upstairs now, it will travel to upstairs, right? So if her problem is downstairs in the basement, if the problem is in the crawl space, have you seen any mold upstairs yet, is an important way to ask the question. Okay. So you haven't seen anything upstairs yet?
No.
Okay. When did you first notice the problem?
For the last year or so, when I go down into the basement, my sinuses just feel like I feel congested. My throat itches.
Okay.
Nose runs sometimes. It's every time I go down there or I go near the guest bedroom.
Okay. Well, that kind of gives us some places to start from a source perspective. Anything else that you're noticing outside of like symptoms? I
don't know. In that bathroom down there, I kind of smell like musty smell, especially after it rains and stuff like that. So that's why I thought we might need to look into this.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. And by the way, I'm making notes on this the entire time, right? So just because I'm not making notes here, when you're using this process, you would be making notes along the way. What changes have you noticed since then, like over the last year? Any changes? Either in terms of visual changes, more symptoms, maybe like you had mentioned the smell. Have you seen any water intrusion, anything like that?
I haven't noticed any water intrusion really. but I don't really know what to look for.
Okay.
So, but I just know that when I go down there, I'm just like, I feel like I immediately got a cold.
Gotcha. Okay. And by the way, and I'm going to do this a lot. We have, I don't know if you can see this, probably not. We've got all these little suggestions out to the right-hand side of this form so that it's kind of like a memory jogger. Sometimes you'll need to look down and just remind yourself of some things that you might want to, say to your customer to prompt them from a response. Okay. What about the problem concerns you most?
Well, I don't want to feel yucky every time I go downstairs and you hear all these stories about mold and toxic, that it being toxic. And so I thought we'd go ahead and get ahead of it before it got any worse. And I don't want a basement that smells kind of musty either, even after a rainy day.
Right. It just is kind of reminds me, you'd mentioned, your kids and things like that. Have they noticed anything? Are they as sensitive to it as you are?
They just say it stinks. It smells down here.
Gotcha. Okay. How about, I noticed that you've got a guest bedroom downstairs, if I remember as well. Do you have visitors noticed it?
No one's brought it up.
Okay.
Maybe they're just being polite.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. Why do you want to fix the problem now?
Well, I've got time to think about it. It's a good time to go ahead and get it done.
Okay.
Now that I'm thinking about it and making some calls, and
maybe this kind of goes back to a question I think that I skipped, and maybe this could be important. How long do you plan to live here?
Till I die.
Okay.
I'm moving again.
Okay. So would it be fair to say that one of the reasons that you want to fix the problem now is more so for your health and maybe not the long-term value of the home?
Right. I mean, that would be a plus if I had to move or whatever, that I'm not stuck with a mold situation or a history of a mold situation, or, at least it's taken care of.
That's one thing that I've noticed a lot of homeowners don't think about is even if they do plan to stay for a while, they're not thinking about that long-term issue that would come up where a buyer could use something in their favor and against you to devalue the home. So one of the things that we would want to do is make sure that anything that could come up later on that could work against you, that we take care of it now. Okay. What repairs have been attempted in the past?
I haven't had to do anything
No?
to our house, really.
Okay.
Just
Okay.
in good shape.
How would you like to use both spaces, right? Because you've got a basement that's finished, which is maybe kind of obvious, but then a crawl space as well. So is there any changes to the way that you would like to use the space in either side, or would you like to use them differently?
The basement will continue to be like more of a family area, so that's important to get it worked out down there. Crawl space is just housing the mechanical, and I don't plan changing that.
Okay. Do you want to use the crawl space for storage or anything like that?
I don't really like going down there too much, so probably not.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. About that crawl space area. And now, by the way, I'm going back in my memory on this stuff. So just keep that in mind. It's going to be important sometimes to return to questions, even though maybe you've already asked them, you want to draw some more information out. Okay, so about that crawl space area, you've got mechanicals down there. You don't want to use it moving forward for any sort of storage. But I think you've been using it to store maybe some Christmas decorations and some other things to this point. Have you noticed any mold growth or anything on those outside of the growth that's going on within the space right now?
I haven't noticed any mold on the bins. Okay.
All right. So you've noticed mold in the crawl space in a general way, just not on your personal stuff. Okay. I'm asking that question because if the customer came back to me and said, yeah, they've got moldy boxes and all these sorts of things, those contents are going to come into their home, right? And certainly if they are going to use that area to store long term, they don't want that to continue to be an exposure issue later on. Okay. Let me see where I'm at now. Okay. What professional advice have you received, if any?
I've had one other company come in.
Okay. So one other company, and why didn't you have them fix it?
He talked about using like a bleach
Mhm.
solution, and that didn't seem right to me. So I thought I'd get a second opinion.
Gotcha. Okay. So maybe it just didn't inspire all the confidence in the world.
Mm-mm.
Okay. Have you already budgeted for the project?
Somewhat, and then depending on what we have to do here, I will either go through some sort of financing, or I'll be calling my banker, I guess.
Yeah. But most of the time, people have, probably a few different ways they like to handle things. And if you're like me, when it comes to sometimes I just have no idea what it's going to cost, right? I'm hoping as little as possible, but some options tend to be, people have saved intentionally for it over time. They are looking for a same as cash alternative so they don't have to use money out of pocket, maybe a credit card, or maybe a home equity line or something like that. Those are typically the types of responses that we get. And this is in your court. We're just going to help you solve the issue, but also, the financial side is equally important. So along the way, let's talk about it. And if you have questions or concerns about it, just let me know. We'll walk you through the details. Other than yourself, who'll be deciding how you fix the problem?
It's just me.
Just you. Okay. That's easy enough. When do you want to have the work done?
I mean, after we see what you've come up with, I mean, we could look at it in the next 3 months.
Okay. Okay. So in the next 90 days, you want to get something scheduled. Is there a reason that you would want to do it sooner or later in your schedule?
Just sooner, because I just don't feel good about like what I'm smelling and like what I'm seeing, and like the scratchy throat. No.
Okay. So if we can figure out solutions for you, it sounds like if we can fit it sooner into our production schedule, you would want us to come in sooner and alleviate it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. All right. So that really wraps up the first part of this process, the interview, right? I've got to create a baseline of information, and in some cases come back to that information later, which is why we're taking notes the entire time on this, because there may be contradictory information that comes back to us later on, and we've got to clarify that information. Okay. Not all homeowners, once the money, situation comes up, homeowners are, could start to push back a little bit. So anyway, just kind of keep that in mind. All right. Now we move to step 2, which is called clarity for the day's visit. All right. So thanks for that information. That helps me understand from your perspective what's going on. The next part of our process is called clarity. And what I want to do is just ask you some questions so I know what to focus on while I'm here as well. So if mold is found in either your basement or your crawl space or both, is remediation and prevention important today?
Today, or once we?
For my focus, as I'm going to be inspecting your home, I need to know what to focus on.
Yes. So you're going to look and just tell me which one is like what you're recommending?
Yes. When I come back from the inspection, I'm going to have the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to share the information with you of what we found. Mm-hmm. Pictures, readings, all those sorts of things. And I'm going to graph all this stuff out so you know where the problems are happening. And then we're going to go through some recommendations to solve those issues. But, going into this, you may have priorities that I don't know about or things that you want me to stay away from. So I want to make sure that I know from a clarity's perspective where to focus. Okay. So if mold's found in either areas, is remediation important today?
Yes.
Okay. So you notice what I did there, right? She had a question, and I had to even clarify that, right, as to what the purpose of us going through this list is. And then the first question is, if mold is found, is remediation and prevention important today? We combine those first two things because there's, first of all, a lot of other questions to come, and because that 95% of the time, statistically, passive moisture control is sold with remediation. Close the first time. 90% close initially. 5% close with a little more education. The other 5% just opt for remediation alone. So just kind of keep that in mind. Okay. Second question: if mold staining is found, is removal of mold staining important today?
Yes, I don't want to see it.
Okay, fair enough. And that's important because, as you know, as a professional, pigmentation staining isn't an indicator of a conducive condition. That's problematic long term. It's just a stain that's in the surface. But if mold staining is a concern, I know going forward that, for example, React Extract is going to take care of that, and I can sell that as a, position that as a benefit. If foundation efflorescence is found, is redensifying important today?
I don't know what any of that means.
That's a common response, by the way. So efflorescence is as moisture wicks from outside your foundation wall to inside. It's going to carry with it calcium and things like that. On the surface, pardon the pun, it doesn't seem like it's very important, but really what's going on is the solids in that wall are resurfacing on the other side, and slowly over time you're losing density to the foundation, which can create weakness in the foundation. So while we're working on a foundation, oftentimes we just ask the question as to how important it is to you for redensification.
Maybe that'll be important. We'll maybe cross that bridge.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, and again, I'm going to do a full inspection, so you're going to see pictures of all this stuff. We just kind of like to get an idea of what you want us to focus on. Is a groundwater and seepage solution important today?
Yeah, I mean, I would want to make sure nothing's coming in into that area and down in the basement.
Right. And I think that you had told the folks over at the company that you see water coming into the crawl space whenever you have heavy rains and things like that. Yep. Okay. If exterior surfaces are porous, like in other words, like the outside of your foundation walls or the exteriors in general, is weatherization to prevent damage important today?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's a question that a lot of people aren't asking, and it's a easy upsell, by the way, because so many people notice deterioration over time from weathering and things like that. So, we'll provide these to you, but asking that question along the way, it's connected with the rest of what's going on, and so it simply makes sense to correct those issues while you're there as well. Okay. Is controlling moisture from the earth important today? In other words, like in that crawl space environment, I think that you'd said there's some puddling and things like that going on. Is controlling that moisture coming up from the earth important today?
Yeah, because I feel like that probably is exacerbating other issues. So
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And along with that, are you wanting a basic vapor barrier, or are you wanting to seal it off once and for all?
Probably just do a vapor barrier.
Okay. Just a basic vapor barrier?
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
I don't know the difference between all this stuff, but I don't feel like I need to have it like concrete or anything in there.
Yeah, and if there's two ways of thinking about it. So a basic vapor barrier is going to be about 6 mils thick. Okay. If you're not going to be using it, or no one's going to be like if your pest control company, or if you don't have a pest control company, isn't going to be in there and sitting from year to year, you may just be fine to have a basic vapor barrier. If anyone's going to be in there over time and is going to be trampling on it and that sort of thing, it's not going to take many years until that just starts to kind of get ragged and you have to replace it. So that's why we asked the question. Okay, but we can come back to that as well if you would like. Okay. Is minimizing outside water intrusion important today?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm making notes here. Is a sump pump solution important for today's visit?
No.
No? Okay. So I'm just going to put no here. And I'm going to ask one other question. Is keeping it dry, the space dry all the time, important to you?
Yes. Does that mean I should look at a sump pump?
Well, perhaps. Okay. Again, all of this stuff is on a sliding scale, and every home is a little bit different. But ultimately, you're going to make the decision on what's important. Some pumps, especially if they're on a battery backup, can be helpful for power outages and things like that. If you never see power outages, you might not want to worry about it. If you do, you might. So it's just something to
We
keep
have
in
a
mind.
generator, so
Okay.
I might not.
You might not even need it.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough. Do you go away from home much? Vacations,
Not
things
as
like
much as
that?
I'd like.
Okay. That may have been a personal dig. Okay. Finally, if possible, is an insulation solution important for today's visit?
For down in that crawl space, or
Well, you had mentioned that perimeter and it being cold around the outside.
yeah, we might look into that.
Is it snowing? Yeah, it's snowing. Weird. Okay. All right. Sorry about that, guys.
Distracted by the weather.
Okay. So you may take a look at an insulation solution,
Yeah.
possibly. Okay. All right. Great. So then that wraps up the second stage, clarity for the day's visit. So let's go on to the third stage. Okay. Now let me position this for everybody. The next stage is called the accomplished list. So I'm going to turn to my customer and say, okay, the final thing that we need to get straight is your accomplished list. Now, the accomplished list is not for me. The clarity was for me to understand what's most important to you. The accomplished list is for you. Nothing is going to go on this accomplished list without your consent. Okay. And this is going to be what we focus on in terms of services for your home. When you're building the accomplished list, the only recommendation that I'm going to make is you have me put down here what's important to you. You're going to have reservations, maybe about price and things like that. But there's only two things that are going to control price ultimately, and that is the size of the house, all right, which we can't control, it's here, and what you decide to put in it. Okay, nothing else. So you have me add to this list whatever you want. So would you like me to add to your accomplished list fixed groundwater seepage?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to write down fix groundwater seepage. All right. Would you like me to add to your accomplished list control earth moisture?
Yes.
All right. Control earth moisture. Would you like me to add keep dry all the time?
Yes.
All right. And keep dry all the time. Would you like me to add to your accomplished list strengthen and redensify the foundation?
If it needs it.
Okay. Fair. We're going to do the inspection and we'll know upon completion if you're having efflorescence issues or not. So why don't we do this? We're not going to add, I'm just going to say maybe if efflorescence is an issue. Okay. Would you like me to add to your accomplished list control foundation seepage and fix walls?
Yes.
Okay. Control foundation seepage and fix walls. Would you like me to add to your accomplished list remediate and prevent mold, rot, and odors?
Yes.
Okay. Remediate and prevent mold, rot, and odors. Would you like me to add to your accomplished list improve comfort and save energy?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Improve comfort and save energy. And there's one other thing that we talked about, and that was the outside of the house and preventing against deterioration, things like that. Would you like me to add weatherize home from outside?
Yes.
Okay. Weatherize home from exterior. Okay. Now we have a list of everything the customer wants us to do as far as the services are concerned. They've asked us for that, right? If this ends up being a $20,000 estimate or whatever it might be, that's not important because we can remove items from the accomplished list later on when we're talking about these solutions. But right now, we know exactly what the customer would like for us to focus on. So from the standpoint of understanding the customer's needs, issues, experiences, from clarifying what's most important to them about today's visit, and then also creating an accomplished list that they've had me create. Now I've built an entire case and story about what I'm going to focus on so that now we can go do an inspection, and we've built a relationship, hopefully that's resulted in more trust than somebody who's just come in and gone right to the inspection. Fair enough? Okay. So with that said, that's the first 3 steps. We're going to come back, not next Friday, but the Friday after, and we're going to complete this process with the last 3 steps. But before we do, let's go back to our other cameras here, right? Let's go ahead and add this back into the stream, start this camera, and remove this one. And I'm going to sit where you're sitting, Christy. Thanks for helping us out.
Yeah, thanks for coming over.
Yes, ma'am. All right, let's go back, I think, here. And let me just return my cursor. Can you see that? I can't see where it's at on the screen. There it is. Okay, let's do this. Some tools that you're going to be seeing coming your way fairly soon, having to do with the mold severity index, and the step 4, the education side of what we're going to get to in 2 weeks. And that is the first one, a mold severity index guide. As you can see with this guide, let me blow that up for you a little bit here. There we go. Okay, the mold severity index guide, not only does this capture all the information at the top about your customer, but the instructions says, fill out this guide for the job being assessed, notating as applicable square footage, board footage, cubic footage, and mold severity index by percentage. This is going to help us both because, especially if initially you're wanting us to help you through this a little bit, if we can get the square footages of the entire building, but also by mold severity index. So let me show this. In other words, when you do the inspection, you're going to zone off where you're seeing the various mold severity indexes, and then you're going to give us a percentage and yourself a percentage. That's going to help tremendously with the estimate all the way through executing the job, okay? So we're going to need square footages, board footages. What's a board footage versus square footage? Board footage is extrapolating your square footage because what you're working on has dimensions. So for example, if you're working in a crawl space or a basement, we're talking about the flooring system, and that flooring system is on 2x10s with 12-inch centers, we can tell you that most likely 3 times whatever your square footage is going to be your board footage, okay? Hopefully that makes some sense. Also, cubic footages can be important sometimes, so that might require you to know, ceiling heights or heights of crawl spaces or average heights of crawl spaces to come up with cubic footages. And then, of course, the percentage of each of those areas that has mold severity index 1 through 5. It should equal 100% at the very end. And as we go along, if there's little tweaks that we need to make to this to help you out, let us know. The reason that this is in blue is that this can be right on your iPad and you can fill it out as you go along as part of your overall education process with your customer. And again, this is going to be part of your inspection too. All this information is going to come together in the educate and build trust portion of the sales process. All right, the second piece of this, let me find my screen again, is speaking of educating and building trust, a new education tool. This tool is going to have 4 parts for it: defining the IICRC and the 3 mold conditions, and then helping the customer visually understand the 3 conditions by mold severity index. And then the final 2 portions are sharing the assessment findings, and then finally on educating on the restoration process, okay? Those 4 elements have to be done in order for this to make sense, and we're going to show you exactly how to do that in 2 weeks. All right. The next thing, let's talk about certification. If you've seen our new website, you've probably seen this on the homepage. And we are super blessed to have, the partners that we've had over the years. And we want to make sure that we are delivering qualified leads to you as this certification process and everything that we're doing to make this a reality takes place. Let me move myself back to that. There we go. Okay. So with that, wrong way. With that, on March 29th this year, we at headquarters here in Banner Elk, North Carolina, from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., we are going to run the first certification class. Okay. Now, you've got two options when it comes to this. You can come here for your certification class. And if you are an organization that's probably between two to three people that you want certified. In other words, you probably at least want to have one owner who's certified. You probably want to have someone in the field, and that might be the owner themselves, and then somebody on the sales side of things. So think of it that way. Like if you're a smaller company, maybe you're like primarily from the standpoint of leadership, a two-person company, one person focusing on sales and marketing, one person focusing on operations. The two of you probably would want to come to something like this. And that makes a lot of sense, and it's going to be very budget friendly to do so. Keep in mind also that we can come to you, okay? That's called on-site. So depending upon the size of your organization and how you want us to focus will depend upon which option you go with. So on March 29th, we're going to offer this first class amongst the ongoing on-sites that we are just rolling out right now. So that is going, here's the itinerary for that, okay? The morning session looks like this. We're going to do a initial safety session to get this day started, focusing on protective suits, job types, chemical exposures, and respiratory and hand protection. Then we're going into the equipment side of things, the right fogging, misting, I keep getting in front of it, and spraying equipment, BTM construction, maintenance, and use and best practices, mold severity index from the standpoint of the field, okay? So this has to be divided out into two parts. There's the sales side of things, and then there is the field and operations side of things. So we're going to be going over mold severity index in the morning. And then service efficiency and profitability, disinfection, dwell times, and clearances. And by the way, in service efficiency and profitability, that's when we get into starting with all the hands-on side of things with React Extract and use of the products and use of all the tools that we've gone through to that point. So then we've got disinfection, dwell times, and clearance. And then finally, the mornings finishes up with breathable versus non-breathable coatings and selection. And that will also go into all the different opportunities out there, from new construction to what we were just demonstrating here with existing construction, post water damage applications. There's, 8 to 10 different applications that we're going to get into with all of this, quite honestly. Okay, the afternoon session is going to be the mold severity index and sales, products, procedures, and terminology for sales, because there's a lot of things that we want from a technical standpoint that translate into the afternoon when we are focused on sales. We don't want to take for granted that everybody has made that leap. Introduction to the S.E.T sales process, making sure everyone understands the purpose, again, within the context of the perfect customer life cycle, and that we're checking all the boxes there, and there's a complete understanding of the sales process itself. And then we're going to spend a really bulk majority of our time focused on step-by-step going through the S.E.T sales process as a role play, meaning that everyone's going to be paired up one-on-one, and we're going to be going through this and making sure that everyone's had the adequate time to go through each of the steps and role play that so they can feel what it's like to be in the customer's shoes, what it's like to be in the sales shoes, because a lot of aha moments tend to occur during that process. And we're going to coach along the way to make sure everybody's is comfortable with it, and that you're comfortable with the tools being used as well. Then we're going to get into estimating for protocol and profit, right? The S.E.T sales process and the mold severity index are going to help you develop everything from your estimating to ensure that you're profitable and your protocol to ensure that you're profitable. And we want to show how all of that comes together for your company. All right, so registration for this event is $375 per person if you're coming here to our Banner Elk location. And the way that you'll register right now is to drop us a line at certification@enviroguarddirect.com, or just contact us by phone at 828-548-3900. I'd love to have all this registration on the website, and we will. But right now, we're getting this out of the ground. We're taking so much work that we've done over the last 12 months, and it's most important that we just focus on the content and focus on the tools and do that right, rather than focusing on registration technology. Okay, so if you are interested in registering, register for the March 29th, yes, 29th event by contacting us at certification@enviroguarddirect.com or call us at 828-548-3900. If you want us to do an on-site, it is a $1,500 charge for us to come to you. That's the full day for all of the teams. So if you are the company that says, we've got 8 people who we want to get certified or whatever it is, and you want us to come to you for the day, then it's $1,500 for your company. You'll register the same way at certification@enviroguarddirect.com or simply call us to register. And if we're traveling over 2 hours, there's just a simple additional charge for the additional travel costs, if that makes some sense, right? If we're going 8 hours and the day before we've got to travel all the way out so that we're fresh the next day, yeah, there's just a little extra charge to go along with that. We'll figure that out with you. Okay. And then finally, the next live stream where we're going to cover the last 3 portions of the S.E.T sales process is Friday, March 3rd. So after we return from the Northeast, we're going to talk about the logic and steps of final 3 steps of the S.E.T sales process. So I know that was a lot today. We are 54 minutes into this thing, and we appreciate the time that you've spent with us. Hopefully it was good to have us for lunch today, kind of a little lunch and learn, if you will. And we will see you 2 weeks from today. And don't forget, if you're up north and you have some time, you'd like us to stop by, have a chat, just drop us a line or give us a call, and we'll get that into our schedule for next week. Have a great weekend, everybody. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.